back with more NFL coverage, and in this one I'll be covering all the NFL developments that have happened over the past couple weeks. Now, of course, it's been a little bit since I've been able to do an NFL-centric video with the NBA season coming to a close recently, and that should open things up across all the different sports. There have been a ton of news generally, including some in the college-adjacent realm that have to be mentioned pretty soon, and we'll get to that when the time comes. But for the NFL specifically, there's been a variety of things. We mainly have some contract extensions here, but there have also just been several tragic and murky situations that have gotten into a further, not necessarily state of closure, but we're trending in that direction with a couple of these, and there are some others that have begun as well that are just like, why would such and such person do this? So when those situations come about, I'll have to enforce a bit of a trigger warning because they warrant that, to be honest, with the details expressed in those cases. We have a lot of lighter information to start out, though. And to get straight into it, probably one of the more surefire things that have taken place was the Broncos giving Patrick Surtain II a $5 million raise for this season. And that can also increase to 10. I believe he either makes the All-Pro team or wins the Defensive Player of the Year. One of those two things trigger that. Clearly, the man is one of the best corners, if not the best cornerback in the league, depending on who you ask, and he has performed up to par since he's gotten this contract in the first place. The fact that they can just go out and say, hey, we'll boost your pay a little bit because we think that for this upcoming year with everything that you've done so far, we're actually underselling you. You know that you are a great asset in the NFL when they decide, the front office, that your value is far lower than what they initially projected, and they decide to hike it up just a few knots anyways. That's the situation that Patrick Surtain II finds himself in, and it's well-deserved for a man who, again, won Defensive Player of the Year in 2024, is a 4-time All-Pro Bowler, and a 2-time All-Pro First Team member. Of course, he made second Team All-Pro last year. That there's just not many in this day and age when it comes to corners who've gotten off to this good of a start. And it's something that you love to see from the second generation of Surtain here. Obviously, his father played in the NFL for 10 seasons, and again, it's safe to say that he is carrying along that legacy, and then some very well, already doing things that his dad had not come remotely close to doing at this point. So, it's just a good situation all around. It's a luxury for the Broncos to have him, and they know it, and they're paying him like it. Now, at least, for this upcoming season. Because he's earned it. And, that's how some of these other players just need to operate, We know that Surtain II has a talent, and I'm sure that when he's gotten a chance to talk his shit, he'll talk his shit. He's more than warranted to. If you don't have that leverage, you gotta just try to work your way there. You have to make sure that you're actually as good as you say you are before you can start conveying all of these different messages out like you're like that. You don't have that kind of leverage just yet. You haven't proven it on the field. Model after Patrick Surtain II. That is kind of the standard right now, Do that. And it could get you to an extremely high level. In some cases, though, it doesn't work like that, right? At the end of the day, contract extensions are all about projection. And this defines that to a T. I did allude to the fact that the Steelers gave Nick Herbig a 4-year, $100 million contract extension in the last recap that I did. But you just kind of have to expand on it a little further, and so I'll make some brief light of that here. The man in his first 3 seasons has only started in 11 games, and started in a career-high 6 just this past year. Now, when he did see the field and got those higher volume of reps on the playing surface, he did have 3 forced fumbles, a pass deflection, 7.5 sacks, a fumble recovery, 4 touchdown, and 30 tackles on the year, along with 13 for loss. And considering that he played in 15 games, started just 6, that is actually a pretty good pace. Something that the Steelers love to see. Of course, you have an edge rushing core of Highsmith, as well as TJ Watt, obviously, in a way. The thing is, with all the stuff you'd hear right now, TJ Watt is kind of on the back burner of his career. And that is a huge pill to swallow for some people. I mean, he's still like 30 years old. He should be in the middle of his prime right now. And those things are fair to say. The reality is that it has not been as successful. They believe that TJ Watt's effectiveness in ways is diminished over the past few seasons, and he obviously hasn't seen playoff success yet, which is a crime in and of itself. That might be a larger testament to how dysfunctional the Steelers have been, mainly with trying to figure out the quarterback situation since the start of the decade, honestly. That is a crime. But you have to find a way to adjust to those situations regardless, and Watt himself might own just as much blame for that. This team's strength is obviously in their defense, with an aging Aaron Rodgers who will play his final season for the team, and you don't have much hope in your quarterback room outside of that right now. You're trying to work towards that. You have a decent wide receiver core, which has honestly seen its improvements in the offseason, with you upgrading to Michael Pittman Jr. as a complementary piece alongside DK Metcalf. That does show promise, but it's about tying it all together. And then, of course, you have Rico Dowdle in that backfield. Now, they'll still lean heavily on this defense to get the job done. It's already the most expensive in the NFL, and this could be seen as either one of two things. You are looking to grow Nick Herbig as a player in this case. Allow him to see more time on the field this season, generally, with a higher percentage of snaps. And you're hoping that he can perform even better. If it happens even slightly, he doesn't need to have a ballistic 15 sack season in a deep rotation like the Steelers are trying to build. But if you can get him to at least 10 sacks or something like that, and have him be able to stuff the stat sheet in several different ways while turning him into one of your core defenders, that would be a massive payoff for this contract. $25 million a deal does not make him a top-end pass rusher. And I would not think that the Steelers are trying to push those expectations on him right now. But with a higher respect in that locker room now, after what he did in 2025, that momentum could carry forward into something special next season. So that's one way this could end up going. The other way is honestly not something that the Steelers would love to hear, but you give him those opportunities and it doesn't bode well. Injuries could be something that factor in. The defense continues to falter and his individual play suffers. Finally, in this season. Because for him to do that in 2025, with just how inconsistent the Steelers defense already was, that is a great sign. But of course, that progress isn't always linear. And so those are the things that the Steelers are going to have to watch out for in the upcoming year when it comes to Nick Herbig. It's a decent signing for what they may intend to do. I don't know if people are going to be blown away by it, though. But we can only tell that tale with time. So once the NFL season gets underway, we'll really be able to see what he's made of, I think. And you look at his situation personally, I didn't even know that he was born in Hawaii. Coming from there, playing at Wisconsin for college, obviously, and finding yourself making it to a second contract, despite not being a player seen as one of the primary guys on the team, it's a major accomplishment for Nick Herbig. That is a lot of wealth on his own end that he can provide for those around him. So that is always the aspect of things that you can't take lightly. From that standpoint, it's like, hey, Herbig is on cloud nine. He should be. Enjoy the moment, I'm sure that he'd be willing to make the most of it when it's time to play this upcoming year. Keeping the contract extensions and generational wealth reining in, the Falcons would do something that was projected in a way by CBS Sports when it came to them talking about all of the different wide receivers following the massive record-setting Jackson Smith and Jigba contract that could follow up with a extension on their second deal of their own. One of those names happened to be Drake London, and lo and behold, per Adam Schefter, going back a couple weeks here, they signed Drake London to a 4-year, $141 million contract extension. Massive price tag. And again, I'd already outlined, some of the things that could have held the Falcons back from making this potential deal. The fact that he was limited with injuries last year could be some cause for concern. The fact that, hey, even with him being as good as he can be, he does only have the lone year in 2024 with over 1,000 yards, getting up to a career high 1,271 that particular season. Those are things that you could look at as potential red flags and say, maybe we hold back on going all in for this player. At the same time, when you have a draft pick that you invest that much in Drake London in the first place, keep in mind, they got him early in the 2022 NFL draft, 8th overall. Even with the numbers being a thing and considering that other wide receivers might stack up better in terms of the numbers, at the same time, the talent with Drake London is undeniable when he is out there. And you have to take a chance on that. It's only right, especially when you understand how dire the situation is at quarterback. The best thing that the Falcons could do right now is protect all of their assets. At least in the skill position areas. That means something. You cleared up some of the losses there. Obviously, you get rid of Kirk Cousins. You don't have Darnell Mooney anymore. You always figured that guys like Kyle Pitts Sr. and Drake London were going to be your main guys. And so, managing that. Earlier in the offseason, they franchise tagged Kyle Pitts Sr. So, you had some money cleared up in the first place for this season when it came to the salary cap. And it does help as well that the quarterbacks in your locker room are so bad that you literally only have to pay Tua Tagovailoa $1 million. With that much money on the books, it was only a matter of time, in a way, before Drake London was going to get this deal. And potentially, down the line, they could do it for Bijan Robinson as well. That is the sentiment that's been echoed throughout the offseason. They, in London specifically, is a player who does deserve the contract. It's a lot of money. It does pay him like a top 10 receiver. And the main thing with him is to show that next step. We all understand about the catch radius and his ability to win those physical matchups against most every corner in the league. He's literally 6'4" and 215. You ain't, when it comes to the body-to-body contact that some of these passes will draw, there aren't many situations, 9 times out of 10, where Drake London is going to lose that battle. It's just not going to happen. You have to make sure that a wide receiver like that stays on your team. He does have the ability to stretch the field in ways, so it's not totally a matter of him solely being a possession wide receiver with a slow release point and just a lack of ability to make yards after the catch, a la Kenny Galladay. Yeah, I struck a nerve with all the fucking Giants fans who just now had to deal with the fact that you have Darnell Mooney on your team too. Yeah, that kind of shit, right? Drake London is light years ahead of that particular conversation. But it's about continuing to round out his game and hopefully turn in seasons down the line that make it undeniable that he is, in fact, the potential top 10, top 15 wide receiver in the NFL. That conversation can get convoluted because there are so many talented guys all across the board. And, no matter who you put on that potential leaderboard, there's always someone who is more than likely going to be left out, and it can be seen as egregious in ways, yet at the same time, there are only so many mouths to feed here. Same thing that you could say the Falcons are dealing with. If they would have kept their existing wide receiver core last year, or carried that over from last year, I don't know. Like, Drake London is obviously a piece that is pretty much untouchable. A lot of the other guys were expendable, but at the same time, of course, you're still allocating so much money to those guys, it's going to make it hard for you to extend Drake London in this way. Finally, once they got it done, boom. Getting in that bank for pretty much like $35.25 million per year. Just a massive contract on the Falcons' end. And I'd be very interested to see what they do to involve Drake London more. I mean, of course, it's a 2-man, 3-man game. All three of these guys have the ability to work as receivers out of their respective positions on the field. But with Drake London being the unquestioned one on that team, finally, in a way, he could be on the path for one of those seasons. So, hey, if you are one of those guys that is heavily invested in this stuff, I'd key in on Drake London a little bit. Don't sleep. Because the opportunities for this man are going to be there. And drawing the top corner on a specific team isn't even really much of a problem for Drake London at all. They'll try to, keep him in those situations to open up the field for other wide receivers. That is a genuine question to ask, though. Because the Falcons do trust him to hold down that role as an anchor. Is this a year where the Falcons do decide, with a lot of change in their overall regime, quite frankly, obviously Fontenot being out, them getting Ian Cunningham as a member of the front office and GM, obviously having Kevin Stefanski as a head coach. Like, this is pretty damn good when you think about it. This is the best wide receiver that Kevin Stefanski has had in quite some time. And with Stefanski being an offensive mind, I'm just wondering, do they start to move him around? You've seen it a lot of different teams with their own receivers, whether they're like primarily slot people or not, they just motion them all over the field to create those mismatch opportunities. I'm wondering if they do that a little more, explore that potentially from time to time with Drake London back there. It would make for the perfect mix. Because whenever Stefanski would try to go for that shit in Cleveland, it was always a gamble. Those wide receivers were just not of a great quality. And that shit failed time and time again. So having Drake London in your back pocket, ooh, that could be so dangerous to play around with, man. I'll tell you. Niggas ain't ready for that. If they get into that bag, oh my gosh. Okay, the Lions, moving on for a bit, hire Chris Grier as a personnel executive. Yeah, that Chris Grier. Alright. There was also a warrant out for the arrest of Brandon Aiyuk on the part of the Santa Clara District Attorney's Office. Plus, with some of the stuff that I've been seeing over the past couple weeks with Brandon Aiyuk literally posting videos on Instagram talking about all this shit, bro. I'm like, what the fuck is going on? Like, some of the stuff that he was saying too, I'm like, Brandon Aiyuk, of all people, put himself in this situation in the first place. I don't know how he has the gall to say some of that shit that he is saying about the 49ers and these other teams. When you put yourself in this spot, dude, he still believes right now that there are going to be teams pursuing this. Like, everyone in the NFL has heard these stories about you not being seen for a month and then doing that, speeding far over the limit near the stadium, which is why he had initially faced this warrant. And to this point as well, we still have to factor in that, like, yo, whether this is a mental health thing or not, dog, they already cut ties with you. They voided your deal. You do not have a foot in this door right now with this team. That has been made more than clear to this point. So I just don't understand how Brandon Aiyuk from his position can do or say some of these things. You really do hope that he turns this situation around completely. But, like, what exactly is he on about at the same time? Like, you don't get off saying some of this shit with what we have personally seen unfold over the past year and some change. From the decision to back out of a potential move after threatening the 49ers to leave. Obviously, the injuries are another conversation entirely. Like, this is just a terrible mix of all the misfortunate things that a player could be dealing with right now. Newsflash, not many teams are going to touch that. Not many teams are going to touch that. And honestly, one of the only ones that would historically do it, in a way, even without Bill Belichick being there right now, they already picked up A.J. Brown. They don't need to add another wide receiver like that who has less talent at this point. The Raiders could be another team to do it, but not with what they are trying to build for their future. Cowboys could do it. Oh yeah, they just recently franchise tagged George Pickens and they already have CeeDee Lamb. Like, the value has diminished a little bit for Brandon Aiyuk, unfortunately. Just a tough spot to be in for him. I understand it. But whatever he is doing right now is not helping the cause. I'm telling you. He's like, he got chilled, bro. Like, this is crazy. The Steelers would also make another move on a contract extension, this time signing Darnell Washington to a 4-year, $42 million contract extension. There's not a lot of risk with that. You don't generally see tight ends of lower value, at least, getting that top-tier money. Of course, you're seeing an outlier right now with Travis Kelce getting the contract extension he has right now. That's a bit of a loyalty deal. Darnell Washington is a unique case. You know, they typically say that these tight ends are generally built like linebackers. You have Darnell Washington, on the other hand. They have this man essentially as a defensive tackle, conveniently lined up to protect the quarterback at all costs. His specialty coming out of Georgia was as a blocker, first and foremost. And when you have to deal with a mammoth of a man like that on the other end, how the hell are you supposed to get past that as a typical edge rusher or defensive lineman? And don't you dare be a cornerback trying to come around that edge, sneak up on the quarterback's blind side, only to have to deal with a 6'7", nearly 300-pound man. And I think somebody here is telling a lie. They have this man on Pro Football Reference listed at 264 pounds. Didn't this motherfucker play at over 300 pounds at some point last season? Did he not play over at 300 pounds at some point of time? Like, I'm dead. Am I fucking crazy? In fact, the dude might have been nearly 320 pounds at some point last season. And you have to deal with that primarily as a blocker. That has been a massive boost to a Steelers team that has honestly been trying to sort out their offensive line issues, and it's generally been tough. The interior of that line is generally young. They've had to move those positions around, and when it comes to some of the outside blockers, for example, they had the setback with, I think, Broderick Jones, who is now dealing with an injury that could potentially put his career in jeopardy. Having that extra lineman in Darnell Washington has been a need for this team more so than a luxury. And it has kept the run game for the Steelers generally honest over the past few seasons. They've not necessarily topped the NFL, but they've been a steady course. Been on a steady course with that unit. And they have needed that with having a much older, less mobile quarterback in Aaron Rodgers holding it down for them, or attempting to at least, on the back end. Along with the number of different situations that they still have to figure out with the quarterbacks following this last year from Aaron Rodgers. But that's a totally different conversation. Then you get into Darnell Washington as a receiver out of that spot. And a few times last season, we saw it. We saw that, hey, this 6'7", 300-plus pound man got more opportunities to get out of the formation, get out of the three-point stance, and actually go out for some catches last year. And proceeded to muscle through pretty much everyone in short yardage. You're not asking this man, Darnell Washington, to go deep, even remotely. that job probably belongs to Pat Freiermuth in a way. They want to run multiple tight ends. All you're asking Darnell Washington to do is go short, say it's a 3rd and 5, and just potentially get you a first down. All he's got to do is make sure that his hands are on point, and the second he turns around, he can just fall forward and literally barrel over entire grown men to move the sticks. There were literal plays where he made these players, veteran players in the league, look like little children. Reference the play against the Bengals. And go ask DJ Turner II if he still feels some form of a twinge in his back after being laid out on his ass because he made the decision to try to tackle this nigga before going on about it. Go ask him how he must still be feeling at this point in time. All these months later, it is June 19th, Juneteenth, as of the recording of this video. Go ask him. Go ask any poor corner who has had to deal with that from the Darnell Washington experience last season. And it's only going to continue. He will be 25 later this year. It's not something that is going to be a typically like crazy contract, but for the Steelers brass out there, and for a team that is trying to reestablish in a way that culture of being a gritty roster and a tough unit generally. Having a player like that on your roster is certainly going to invigorate you. I can't imagine how you'd fail to have that happen with Darnell Washington on your team. It's crazy as well. Like, again, he is by nature a blocking tight end who manages to, with this picture, in a way, look very similar to Antonio Gates. If this is true, that he is now at 264 pounds, they might have told him to drop some weight. If he has actually done that and he's converted some of that shit to muscle, oh dear goodness. The entire league better watch the fuck out. I haven't heard anything about that. I'm not genuinely sure on what Darnell Washington looks like at this point. But if he has converted any ounce of that to fucking muscle, and he now comes out in the NFL season at a firm 6'7", chiseled to the fucking bone. Oh my gosh. That is legitimately the scariest thing that could happen. Because they will fuck around and turn this man into a legitimate red zone threat. All you gotta do is throw it to him. And he could literally box you the fuck out in less than a single second before mossing your ass in the end zone. Or he could go the David Njoku route and just hurdle right over your ass. Like there are so many different ways that this could go. It's an exciting pickup for the Steelers to, show a bit of willingness to re-sign and invest in for the long term. Man, I like that. That is crazy as shit. Oh my gosh. And then the Packers as well would make some waves, because I already thought that Christian Watson was on a contract extension. It turns out that they decided to pay him anyways, signing him weirdly to a 4-year, $110.5 million contract extension. Of course, as we know, the Packers have been in such a weird spot with their wide receivers over the past few years. Hell, even, I guess, ever since Christian Watson got there. Like, they've had talent at that role for years. They have not had any one person in their system to consistently break out and take on that role as a primary X receiver since Davante Adams. For a little bit, that was a good problem to have. When you can go 4 receivers, 5 receivers deep even at a time and potentially get solid to good play out of all of them. But never to an elite level. And there might not be a man more egregious with that than Christian Watson, ironically enough. One of the older rookies in the league when he came in 2022 at the age of 23 as it was. The idea of drafting him in the first round as they did, or second round rather, as they did at that time was that, hey, he was pro ready. He was a sure thing. The speed was world class. The frame itself at 6'4", 208 is worthy of a potential number 1 spot. If we can turn him into a well-rounded wide receiver, we have ourselves a wide receiver 1 for years to come. They've been waiting and waiting and waiting for that. And the yards per reception would tell you similarly that he's an absolute burner. But that's just only part of the story with Christian Watson. He's never played a full season in the NFL. Injuries have always plagued his progression throughout the years. And he only played in 10 games last year. Red flag number 1. It's crazy too as well. Because by this point, when it comes to the 4-year deal thing, you are trying to project on what the player can do over the next few years, looking at what they'd already done for you in their first 3 or 4. And just think about some of the other receivers that have gotten big-time contract extensions this offseason. You know, we already talked about Jackson Smith and Jigba, obviously, going for back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons in just his first 3 years. Drake London, of course, did have the 2024 season, despite his own injuries at that time, still got 1,274. So they want to at least see that, hey, there's a season that sticks out to us that suggests that you can do this even more for us as you have a couple more years before your prom and then tap into that and give us the best you absolutely have to offer. Well, we're here with Christian Watson as he's on the verge of his age 27 season, and he hasn't even come remotely close to that. These numbers for him, this is also one of the main questions surrounding him. His career high in receiving yards was in 2024 with 620. And his career high receptions came in his rookie season with 41. He has never had a receiving season over 1,000 yards, over 900 yards, over 800 yards, over 700 yards. All of them range in the realm of 422 to 620. Those are wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 numbers at best. And a lot of people have kind of given the contract extension criticism for that. Because, like, there's no way that you're seeing him put up the lackluster numbers compared to what you are expecting of him. And you still decide to give him this deal? that nears essentially $28 million per year in worth. Like, oh man. Now again, the Packers in a way do have that Jackson Smith and Jigba contract, the Justin Jefferson contract, ones like those, Jamar Chase to think. Because again, all those wide receivers have done so well in their first few seasons and have gotten contract extensions that have reset the market to get to this point. The range of like $25 to, I guess, $30 million is now about the going rate for those wide receiver 2 caliber players, I suppose. I mean, it's a lot to invest in Christian Watson from that standpoint. Of course, as well, though, we have to look at the alternative part of this. And that is that everything has, in a way, opened up for these wide receivers with them slashing the core in half, pretty much. Even if Christian Watson might be a 2, there could be some room for him to get number 1 reps. There could also be room for Matthew Golden to get number 1 reps alongside him. As I said, I think both of those guys will be playing on the outside with Jaden Reed, a guy who also got paid 3 years and like $50 million. Him playing in the slot. Kind of the irony in that as well. Jaden Reed, ironically enough, by comparison, you look at his overall seasons across his 3 years, and while he's had some injury in the first couple when he was healthy and did appear in a good amount of starts, he actually lapped over Christian Watson's career high in receiving yards in both of his first 2 seasons. And of course, had 1,000 yards from scrimmage in 2024. So I'm just like, you see that from Jaden Reed? Yes, he is literally not playing at all in 2025. You give him only $50 million to where you nearly double that and give Christian Watson an extra year. I don't know about that. But you're hoping that Christian Watson actually steps up in that role. That's what the Packers are really banking on here. And he'd better, because, I ain't gonna lie, they are going to flame the shit out of this contract if he has another season where you barely get over 600 yards. Again, some of that is injury, but man, this is a what have you done for me lately league. If these contracts hadn't reset the market, I don't know how the hell, frankly, Christian Watson would have been able to get away with a deal of that kind on that lackluster production. It doesn't really make sense to the naked eye. I'm not gonna lie to you. It's okay. You love to see him getting that security in mind, understanding what he's been dealing with since entering the league. That's fair. Practically speaking, as a front office who is already investing that much money in Jordan Love, who is already investing that much money in Micah Parsons, you are now offering one of the higher overall contracts on your team to Christian Watson. Okay. We'll play along with it for now. But he better step this up, because this is crazy. I'm not gonna hold you, man. Just go out there, just perform, bro. Just perform. That's all you gotta do. Moving on to news out of Chicago that were pretty much inevitable because of just how slow moving they have been over this entire time. I mean, literally, you could not make it up. They've had literally chance after chance after chance to get down to the brass tacks, structure some form of documentation out accordingly amongst themselves, try to negotiate something in the Senate or the state Congress that could then be passed up to the proper legislation to go forth, get themselves something convenient when it came to this entire conversation of negotiating for a new stadium and setting that up in their own home turf. There were so many chances. Mind you, this is a situation that has been unfolding since literally 2022. And not only have they still not figured it out, but Indiana just continues to get the upper hand on them. According to this article and other sources, a couple weeks back, quote, the Chicago Bears announced on June 5th that their board of directors is voted to advance their stadium development project in Hammond, Indiana, with a specific site to be determined, end quote. Just think about this progression. In less than literally 5 months, Indiana has come into the picture. They have set up a Northwest Indiana Stadium Authority after passing it through their Senate to give them the full scope of literal authority to oversee this project. And they'd just been waiting for the Bears to formally sign off. The Bears hadn't. As quickly as that took, they still had time to get something done, and they couldn't get anything done. Like, do they not understand the urgency of the situation? And as they've stated every single time, this has been a staple of the city since literally 1921. They have played in Soldier Field since then, with the exception of like 1970, and that's it. And you're about to lose the rights to that because you generally cannot find a proper way to enforce these regulations. It makes no sense. Per the statement from both George H. McCaskey and Kevin Warren, the Bears president, quote, we believe a world-class stadium project in Hammond will transform the region, connecting northwest Indiana to the south side of Chicago through the Loop and across neighborhoods and suburbs stretching north of the city. It will bring Chicagoland together and deliver new opportunities to its residents and businesses, end quote. Now, of course, the proximity is relevant in this conversation. Hammond, Indiana, apparently is only 15 minutes away from Soldier Field, preferably via a ride. And so, with it being that close, you can still have, in theory, people specifically from Chicago make a short trip over there to watch these games. That's still totally different from being a part of that culture in true spirit. Genuinely having the Bears in your city for that long and attending there, being a part of the fan atmosphere as well. The historical significance that this roster had. All of it in your own area. That is a totally different feeling. And as a lot of fans would probably be feeling at this point, like this was so simple. This was so preventable. And now we may literally have to again, even if it's that close, it's like it will not feel the same. having Indiana take those rights over from us completely and putting their own spin on things, while we have to make the travel over there just to see our team play. You're asking a lot out of such a committed fan base. And that's the conversation that can get lost in all of this, is these members of the government still are trying to figure this out. They're not conceding that it's a done deal because, again, the sign-off hasn't truly happened yet, but my goodness. Like, it may as well be that way. Like, we're very much close to this now. Like, thanks a lot, Illinois government. I mean, jeez, bruh. You had one job, and not even that could go right for you. Damn shame. Now, apparently, per another article, there is a different Hammond site that could be considered. The one that has been cited in pretty much all the sources up to this point was in Wolf Lake, which is just a city where, again, the development that could be gained with a project plan for having the development of a Bears stadium and other complexes of that nature in that area, it could see a massive economic increase. However, they seem to have another one in mind. According to this quote here, sources familiar with negotiations between the Bears and Indiana officials told NBC Chicago political reporter Mary Ann Ahern that the team is eyeing a second Hammond site not far from the Wolf Lake track that has been the primary focus of lawmakers and team officials up until this point. End quote. That is generally fair. I mean, if it's not too far away from Wolf Lake, then it's probably not that big of a deal. And even as the article goes on to say, hey, as long as it's in Hammond, as long as we're here, hey, we're good. You know what I'm saying? So it doesn't seem like there's much of a big deal about it on Indiana's part. It's all generally, not going to say an empty space, but again, Indiana is one of those states, typically I'd say something like a nothing state. No, it's not that. You just have a lot of fair land to use, a lot of open space to put any number of things in. And when it comes to that, especially when it comes to farmland, you don't worry about touching those specific areas. But in a case of this project to bring the Bears to town, they're not necessarily concerned with that. And so you've opened the floodgates now. They welcome it wholeheartedly. And they have proven over the last few months that they are more than bought in to having the Bears be a part of their organization. So now is the time. If they are still desperate, you've got to find a way to save this team from moving on. Because there's no way that you go out like this to a small town from Indiana. You can't have that on your conscience. Now we get into a pair of things specifically that are centered around domestic violence, pretty much. So I will initiate a trigger warning right now, because the fact that in the same cycle you have multiple conversations surrounding that, along with other ones from recaps past carrying over, you still have some ongoing investigations. But these two in particular spiked up during this time, and one of which involves specifically Jonathon Cooper, the edge rusher for the Broncos. And it's crazy because in this situation, he's obviously gotten himself in a spot to have a pretty good career up to this point. And when you go to look up things about his life, the fact that he had to overcome some of these specific conditions just to be alive, then getting all the way to this point, and now allegedly, per some of these things, taking that for granted and then using that kind of power, I suppose, to do this to other people. It's wild, man. The first bit of this came all the way from June 5th, when he and his girlfriend were both arrested on domestic violence charges. According to the initial article from a Colorado-based NBC station, quote, Cooper and the woman are both being held on suspicion of 2 counts of domestic violence and 1 count of criminal mischief, according to Douglas County Jail records. Represented by Denver attorney Harvey Steinberg, Cooper had a hearing at about 9:45 a.m. Friday in a Douglas County courtroom. A follow-up hearing will be held Monday, when Cooper is expected to enter a plea. After the hearing, Cooper was released on a personal recognizance bond, according to a source. So, this had gone through several different ways by the time I am getting to picking it up now, but in those initial stages, you get the first arrest from Jonathon Cooper here. And generally, even with him and his girlfriend being arrested in this case, right, you can have multiple parties being involved here. It's not anything to take lightly ever when it comes to domestic violence. So it was only a matter of time before the details are going to come out. Initially, they weren't expressed. All that came out at the time was this happened to this player, and we're still awaiting information at the time. Then over the next couple of days, we got to that point. And there's a lot of information, including a very specific detail that, I'm not going to lie, for a second, did make me lose my mind. And it's not to say that it's okay, it's just like the way that it was put, the way that it was phrased, it was crazy. But let's go through the entire thing here. And again, I've already established a trigger warning, so this is very graphic material in nature, so just be warned of that. Now, quote, according to Cooper's arrest affidavit, his girlfriend was arguing with Cooper over cheating allegations in his apartment. She admitted that she grabbed Cooper's phone from him and threw it across the room, then picked it up to go through it, the affidavit says. Cooper then got into a physical struggle with her, grabbed her arm, and took his phone back, according to the affidavit. She then tried to take the phone back, and Cooper braced his neck against her neck to prevent her from getting his phone, the affidavit read. According to the report written by police officer Elijah Hamid, there was no probable cause for harassment or assault charges given conflicting statements and lack of specific physical evidence. After the physical struggle was over, Cooper admitted he told her that he was going to break her phone if she did not leave the apartment, and that he bit her phone when she did not leave, causing disabling damage, according to the affidavit. According to the woman's affidavit, she told police that at one point Cooper grabbed her by the neck with one hand and lifted her off the ground and against the wall for about 1 minute. She said he then picked her up and threw her neck on the ground about 3 times and punched the wall next to her face, the affidavit says. The woman said she was scared and ran deeper into the apartment while Cooper continued to tell her to leave, and said he then grabbed her and tugged her towards the floor, and she was unable to get up, according to the affidavit. She did tell officers that she did not lose consciousness or experience seeing spots, which are symptoms consistent with being strangled, the affidavit says. Officer Victoria Rodriguez, who wrote the woman's affidavit, said she did observe a small mark on her neck where she said Cooper grabbed her, scratches on her arm, and a small cut on her hand, according to the affidavit. However, Rodriguez said the marking and scratches did not appear consistent with a larger male lifting her up into the air by her throat, as well as being repeatedly being thrown to by the ground, on the ground, to the ground. The small mark on her throat did not appear to be consistent with the claim that she had been held up in the air by her throat by another individual, the affidavit reads. The affidavit says the woman was taken to the hospital for a forensic nurse examination, end quote. So that's a lot of information from that particular wave, a lot of it. So it all stems primarily from that specific line of reporting over allegations that allegedly in this relationship, Cooper may have been unfaithful. Now again, we on the outside don't know how true that is. It does end up happening on both sides as well. It's very possible to have that suspicion creep in one's mind and then have a desire, have the impulse to act on it in real time when you come across this person. Apparently, this is what the girlfriend was doing at this point, and at that time, Cooper, trying to deny the access to view whatever might have been going on, whatever might not have been going on, just not letting her get a hold of his phone. Allegedly, these things were done where he's blocking her vision with his neck like this, bobbing and weaving a little bit, and then putting his hands on her, flat out, simple as that. It's just never okay to do. And again, the stuff that Cooper had been through up to this point of time, to take that into consideration and to then follow up with doing these things allegedly, it just never paints a good picture at all. Like, you're generally a young player and you're committing to these kinds of actions. It's like, what exactly are we doing? Like, some of these details, again, they are alleged, obviously. Grabbing her by the neck with one hand and lifting her off the ground? That is a tremendous amount of, I guess, trying to display your own strength. I don't know why you would feel compelled to do that if these things are true. And granted, it even says, right, that, with these marks, with these specific bruises and things, they may not totally be consistent with the girlfriend's claim that she was held up in the air by her throat in this way. But it's just the allusion to something like that happening can, again, not necessarily paint the best picture for Jonathon Cooper right now. And when you have all this going on, it really makes it difficult for people to back what is going on. The team themselves have been relatively mum about the situation up to this point of time. So you have the affidavit from this girlfriend of his at this time. And so they also allude to the notion that some of the things do line up, in a sense. But one of the main things that came out of this, and again, it's not to say that this is a laughable matter at all, but I came across this specific detail on an Instagram post, and they essentially said that this man, Jonathon Cooper, allegedly ate the phone. Yeah, ate the phone. Biting the phone is still, this is alleged, okay? This is still just the most reckless, wildest stuff. All of the different pieces of technology and engineering that go into making a smartphone in the first place. You could literally, in the worst case scenario, electrocute yourself biting a phone. But it's one thing to do that. It's another thing to swallow it whole. And the fact that this was phrased in that way, I'm like, okay, hold up. There's no way that this dude did this. And the context is everything as well. Again, I don't know. This is not my business to determine whether or not this man might have actually been cheating or whatever the case might have been. It's also not my place to dismiss the mindset of his girlfriend either, because we generally don't know what the case might have been. But if it was actually true, that you were doing this. You would go to those lengths just to deny that you did in fact have some unfaithful ways about you. Like, what in the world is going on? Disabling damage, the affidavit says. My goodness, man. So, at the very least, in this first wave, we have this spat here between these two with this alleged backdrop. And, of course, Jonathon Cooper is going to have to undergo further hearings for this. But in the meantime, if it would have just stopped there, it's obviously something that, again, is not acceptable by any means. But Cooper could go through the process. He'd already gotten bonded out. He could go through the process accordingly. They'd go through the legal process and, they'd find what they'd find. I wouldn't say that the case would be resolved, but you'd be able to move on from it in a way a lot easier, in theory, if things weren't true. If they were true, and you did do all those things to your girlfriend, you did lift her up in the air and try to strangle her around the neck and hold her like a rag doll all over the place, oh, good luck, if that would have been true. But only going through the legal process would have confirmed or denied that. It took another step further when they had already, because after that June 5th arrest, in between that time, they must have gone to court, and Jonathon Cooper at that time, he was given a sort of protection order at this time. Just stay out of trouble. We're going to go through the legal process. You don't have to be in jail. We still need you in court. So you can show up, you can do that. As long as you follow these specific regulations, we're going to keep you away from that. The second that you violate them, it's over. And yeah, Jonathon Cooper quite literally did the things that you cannot be doing in these situations. Because, as this article states, essentially, quote, Denver Broncos outside linebacker Jonathon Cooper has been arrested for the second time in a week. And this goes back, of course, to like a little near a week ago. This time, according to court documents, he has been accused of violating a protection order. The latest arrest includes violation of a protection order and harassment for repeated telephone calls. Court documents show that Cooper, 28, was arrested on Thursday night. So, again, going back to the initial wave of information that we had up to this point. Again, I went through a lot. All of them are still allegations to this point. It hadn't gone through the full process of the court of law just yet. We have no way of telling whether or not this information is true, even still to this point. But it's June 19th now. This happened essentially around June 13th. You quite... In less than a full week, you get arrested 2 times with the same pretext. Blow the fucking whistle, dude. Like, something's gotta give. Because if it's just the one incident, that'll be held against you. But at least there's a potential chance for you to, potentially be found not guilty of these things. Now, of course, even with that potential outcome, only those two know what specifically happened on the nights of the original event. And so, would justice truly ever be received by the girlfriend? Unfortunately, there's no way to guarantee that. But having that to deal with is just standing out. If it's the one thing. Now you've added more to your plate on both ends. With something that, again, you could completely control this time. And yet you're still getting in communication with your girlfriend, whom you allegedly did this to, and still trying to allegedly antagonize and harass her. Like, the details of this are just as bad. Quote, according to court documents, deputies responded to an apartment located at 7350 South Havana Street just after 4 p.m. on Thursday on reports of a restraining order violation. An adult woman who identified herself as Cooper's ex-girlfriend told deputies that he had been knocking on her apartment door for 5 to 10 minutes after he had texted her and that she felt scared. She told deputies that she contacted her attorney, who then advised her to call 911. This was a similar detail that showed up in the James Pierce Jr. case as well, with him going to a related member of L'Jarius Jackson's family, allegedly looking for her at the time, and then backing away from knocking on the door when it was found that she wasn't there. Like, what? It's the whole point of a restraining order to keep yourself a good number of feet away from the other person, the other party that was implicated here. That is the entire point, and you throw that out of the window for what? Exactly. I have no idea. There aren't many ways to defend that in Cooper's case. I'm sorry, I just don't know. I don't know. That is the law. That is the law. And you go out of your way to do it. A number of reasons could have factored into it. They, mention here that, again, standing there for 5 to 10 minutes and texting her, even that just makes it sound like this was a one-off thing. No. Get ready for this. Per the NFL.com presser on it, quote, Cooper was accused of sending 20 messages and making 2 unanswered phone calls to his girlfriend Thursday before going to her apartment and knocking on her door, according to the arrest affidavit. End quote. 20 unanswered texts. 20? Deputies then proceeded to detail some of the text messages. Not coming from me. This is the things that were said, okay? All from Cooper's end, not from the girlfriend. Quote, or what are you going to give my messages to your lawyer? Quote, are you scared of the law? Quote, I'm sad without you. I feel low. Oh, man. Oh, my goodness. Like, it reminds me of those things that they give out as a sort of, like, game for, like, just a general form of not necessarily trivia, but kind of a puzzle in a way. Picking out the word that literally does not match with the other two. How are you going to talk about giving messages to a lawyer and allegedly being scared of the law per these text messages, and then follow up with that, talking about some "I'm sad without you, I feel low." That doesn't make sense. That does not make sense. That is the weirdest stuff I've heard. Like, what are you talking about? The severity of the situation cannot be questioned. But what the fuck are those text messages? Oh my gosh, man. And again, you understand at this point, you are literally not supposed to be within a good number of feet in this situation. But by the protection order, you're not supposed to be anywhere near your girlfriend. All these text messages are doing is basically trying to lure her back in, which would still violate the protection order. And again, from my standpoint, because I'm not involved in this, I can look at this with that specific frame of mind. You could not possibly fathom how his girlfriend might have been feeling seeing 20 random messages with this kind of content being sent over to her, and then also getting 2 phone calls from this person randomly. If the allegations from the first arrest were true, and you actually committed domestic violence against her, why would she want to talk to you or have anything to do with you? In the modern day and age, okay, why would she want anything to do with you at that point? The idea of being scared and potentially feeling a number of different ways around you that are all negative would be warranted in her situation. She has all right to cut off communication with you. And this is why the restraining order was put in place. So you're actively trying to loop around that, doing whatever. It makes no sense. I genuinely, for the life of me, do not get it. And even the team, again, who has been relatively quiet about it, they did say they were disappointed by the news. Of course, you know, they're not going to put their own specific reasoning behind that. But you are literally throwing all of these opportunities out of the window just to do that? You gotta use your head. You gotta use your head. Man, I tell you, bro. So with that, because you could not handle the lighter load, they had to follow up with even more ramifications here. According to this article, quote, Cooper appeared in Douglas County Court on Friday morning on the latest charges. He was released on a $5,000 PR bond. Oh, that team is working overtime. The judge also granted a full no-contact protection order in court, which upgrades the initial order, meaning he must not have any contact with the named party, either digital or physical, and relinquish all firearms within 24 hours. End quote. Because apparently the self-control was not there to just leave the situation alone entirely. Like, they can see the phone calls and the messages traced over from your phone number over to hers already. But they're hoping from the first order that you could at least get a hold of yourself and allow the due process to go all the way through. Could not even do that for literally a full week. And got arrested 2 times in one fell swoop. It is crazy, man. It genuinely is. As they mention on, let me see where they have it. Yeah. So with all that in mind, It's been a chaotic situation for both parties. You hope that the girlfriend is obviously in a very safe position right now. If all these things are if all these things are true, you hope she is in a good spot right now. That might be hard to say, but genuinely for her sake. Protection at this point is everything, I would believe. It's why these orders are being put in place now. As this states as well, the motions and hearings for Cooper's arrests are set to take place on July 6th for the first arrest and then July 14th for the second arrest. The overall trial for Jonathon Cooper has now been scheduled for July 22nd. So all of those are dates that I'll personally be looking out for, and you would have to pay attention to in order to keep pace with the situation entirely. You just hope that no more madness unfolds from it. And then to move into the Alaric Jackson realm of things, apparently things got even worse here. Like, I think there was something mentioned that he had done something similar to a damn pregnant woman. Now again, this could be all tied into the same thing. If that specific detail is true, then it's like, bro, Alaric Jackson, what are we doing? What are we doing, man? Again, it's just, I don't understand, bruh. And yeah, I guess getting into this article, they do kind of mention that, hey, this ain't even the first time Alaric Jackson has been wrapped up in something. So again, already not looking the best, man. But as multiple articles state, quote, Los Angeles Rams left tackle Alaric Jackson was arrested on a felony domestic violence charge Monday night, June 9th being. The Los Angeles Police Department confirmed to ESPN. Police said the charge was for a person who willfully inflicts corporal injury against a spouse. End quote. Corporal injury. Jeez, man. I'm like, bro. Oh, I tell you, man, that is just not corporal injury. Not even just a standard physical. Like, these are just dangerous situations. And again, I don't understand what drives the athlete to constantly put themselves in these scenarios. It does not make sense to me. I need help trying to understand what is up with that. It's just, I don't know. And maybe it is best for me to just never, legitimately. As they say here, the news of the arrest was first reported Tuesday by NBC4, which reported that Jackson thought the woman was recording him with her phone and allegedly tried to take the phone out of her hand. According to NBC4, investigators said the woman had scratch marks on her arms. End quote. Again, you could only imagine. You could only imagine what this would be meaning from the outside looking in. Generally, it's a free country. And in most cases, you can freely record. But there are states out there that do have consent law. And so no matter what the case is, especially when you're in a public space, and even in a private setting, which Jackson might have been in, bruh, if they ask you for the consent or say that they are needing that in order for you to do this and this thing, you have to, by law, follow that. Jackson, for whatever reason, thought allegedly that he was above that and decided to do this. I don't know what Jackson might have thought the issue would be with him being recorded here. The only way that you would really have a problem with having that kind of light shed on you is if you were doing something wrong. And clearly, we got to that point with Alaric Jackson. It literally would not be the first time involving being recorded. Because, again, I'm sure that the details of it are murky. Like, we don't know where it happened with Jackson being recorded in this space. Maybe he genuinely wasn't in the mood for it. But by all accounts, it wasn't anything high leverage or anything risque. Unlike what he pulled a year earlier. Because just think about this for a situation. Think about this for a second. My fault. As this quote states from SB Nation, an article that they put out, this is far from the first incident involving Alaric Jackson. In 2024, he was suspended 2 games for violating the NFL's personal conduct policy, though no information was made public about why Jackson was suspended. Then, in November of 2025, he was named in a civil lawsuit by a woman who says she met Jackson for intercourse the year prior and filmed her without her consent. When she asked Jackson to delete the video, he mocked her, saying she would never know whether the recording was truly deleted. The suit claims that the plaintiff has suffered emotional and psychological harm by not knowing what has happened with the video since. So again, the irony in that. You're telling me that allegedly in this situation, you didn't want to be recorded so much that you decided to, again, put your hands on a woman, put alleged scratch marks on this woman just to get the phone, your phone rather, out of her hand. Well, her phone rather, out of her hand. Okay? You go to those lengths to do that to this woman, allegedly. When not only a few months earlier, in a much worse situation, to have a recording without consent take place. A much worse situation. You allegedly mocked this victim. And they still don't know where the video ended up. Literally doing that during intercourse. And then taunting this person allegedly after you did it. Thinking that you could just get away with doing that to a person. It's just horrible. First and foremost, there's no other better way for me to put that. That's horrible shit right there. It's like, what the fuck? So again, man, I don't know. I think more details are set to come out about this, but this is just, again, ugly. Like, you're going to do that to someone, allegedly, in November of 2025, and then you turn around in a much lower leverage situation and proceed to commit even more damage here. It's wild, man. So again, I just won't understand why people put themselves in these situations, man. 2 different players here who do hold some form of importance to their team. Not when it comes to stuff like this. Any number of things could happen in these cases over the next few days, weeks, quite frankly. And so we'll have to see. It's not stamped. Nothing has been absolutely confirmed, aside from a few details. But this shit is just not good. Not at all. Alaric Jackson also posted $50,000 bail. Just legitimately disgusting, man. I mean, like, Just a very twisted form of karma here, dog. Like, there ain't no way. Just look up those details for yourself, because that's gross. And the second that the tables were turned on you, in maybe a situation that wasn't literally happening, in intercourse, you didn't like it all of a sudden. Yeah, okay, you fucking, oh my gosh, like, jeez, man. Now, moving back into a few things that are at least reasonable, far more reasonable than that shit. The Chiefs did a couple things, starting out with re-signing L'Jarius Sneed on a short 1-year deal. And in doing that, it is safe to say that the Chiefs were mutually desperate to get a reliable cornerback. Of course, they had L'Jarius Sneed with Trent McDuffie in that 2023-2024 season, where, quite frankly, L'Jarius Sneed had been at the height of his powers. I mean, this dude, literally, as I was saying during that year, was legitimately a weapon when it came to being a tackling cornerback. Literally. I had been echoing it throughout the entire year, and the man proceeded to etch forth yet another season where he had more than 75 tackles. He was good at hawking the ball. He was good at logging pass deflections. He was a complete cornerback with this Chiefs team. And it paid off for them just as they flowers how it fared for him to go up against a complete cornerback in that subsequent AFC Championship game. Yeah, that was L'Jarius Sneed just a few years ago. And he had been riding high. But the Chiefs still decided that Trent McDuffie at the time was a bit of a better corner for them. That they likely would have had to pay both at some point, that they wouldn't settle for doing with L'Jarius Sneed, and he was promptly sent over to Tennessee for that year. Now, of course, for the Chiefs in this, they did get another pretty good year out of Trent McDuffie, but the team as a whole has trended in the wrong direction. And with other contracts looming, they obviously had to let Trent McDuffie go. They traded him and Jalen Watson over to the Rams. So, with that in mind, they've also drafted corners. They still had Noah Williams, for example, a rookie last year from TCU, still on their roster, yet you probably don't want him taking on that larger role right now. He's not that caliber of a cornerback coming out of the draft process. You wanted something that could at least hold down the fort, and L'Jarius Sneed may be able to do that for you. But in the same way that the Chiefs, since that 23-24 year, they've very much, with all the one-score wins they especially had in 2024, just survived, rather than been the team to dominate and overly compete at the highest level that they typically would against these other teams. That is diminished, in a way, the inevitability for the Chiefs And the production has certainly diminished for L'Jarius Sneed over that same time, mainly due to injuries. He has played in just 12 games over the previous 2 years with Tennessee. They say that the Titans are where wide receivers go to die. This is the same Titans team that has literally had, in just a couple year span, L'Jarius Sneed, who is now a Chief once again, but not even having the same kind of momentum coming into this tenure as he once did. You know, the entire career with this team saw just 3 pass deflections, all coming in 2025. 49 total tackles and just 2 tackles for loss. He may not be the same force that he once was. And so, in that, after getting a booming contract extension with the Titans, it failed tremendously for them. The Titans might have been expecting more, and they didn't get that out of them. The Titans are also not that great of a roster, generally speaking. And even if you aren't going to fully rely on L'Jarius Sneed to hold down the primary corner role like you once did, you at least have other pieces around you who are still there to, lighten the load on them a little bit. Most of that defensive core is still there. Your Chris Joneses, your Chris Karlaftises, your Nick Boltons. They're still there. Shaynall's gone. But you're probably not losing too much sleep over that with having, ironically enough, Drew fucking Tranquil. So it could be a fair move for the Chiefs to pick him back up. And again, they're not losing sleep over it. It's a 1-year deal. But I just gotta see, is this going to be a year of good health for Sneed? Because whenever he has been healthy, for the 3 straight years in a row where he was at his healthiest, he became literally one of the most elite corners in the league. He just has not consistently been out on the field or available enough to make this consistent. That's the trick with him right now. He is going into his age 29 year. You're hoping that he can get back to that in some way. He's supposed to be in the prime of his career. We'll see, man. You will see. Joel Bitonio retired from the NFL. The long-tenured offensive lineman last played with the Browns. Spent all of his 12 seasons there and was a bit of a late bloomer in a sense, logging from 2018 to 2024 7 straight Pro Bowls and back-to-back All-Pro first-team selections in 21 and 2022. Bitonio genuinely has been one of the better offensive linemen, especially at the guard position, over the last decade. And the fact that his ass is stuck with fucking Cleveland for the entire time shows you just how much they waste premium talent on their offensive line position. It already happened with Joe Thomas, damn it. You'd think that they would not have to repeat something like that. I'm not saying that Joel Bitonio is the same caliber of player as Joe Thomas was, but damn, man. He is legitimately a good guard. Now, granted, over the last few seasons, as his age has gotten up there, his efficiency at that position might have gone down just a little bit. And that's fair. That's the father time element in all this. But my goodness, man, for at least a decade, he was up there with the best of the offensive guards in the league. You can't ask for much more than that in their position, and they still could not capitalize on it. Aside from one playoff run in 2023 and a fluke win against the fucking Steelers in 2020. Oh, they'll never live that down. Again, major contributor to that. Blocking for Baker Mayfield and the 12 different quarterbacks and change that have appeared with this fucking team in games since he's gotten there. Like, it's wow, just wow. I tell you, bro. I tell you, man. My gosh, bro. Just a shame, man. We'll have to see. He would, if he were to make the Hall of Fame, he'd probably be up for consideration, I would think. If this retirement stands, he'd be eligible in 2031, more than likely. So, hey, I don't know. You know, it's a very successful career for Bitonio individually, though. Seeing as he came out of the second round, drafted 35th overall, and he'd been in the league for that much time? That's better than most can say. Like, generally, you look at this 2014 draft, and there are some other players here drafted far before him that aren't even in the league at this point. Greg Robinson is out of the NFL. Ja'Wuan James is out of the NFL. Even the same fucking quarterback that they drafted before him, in Johnny Manziel, had been far removed from the NFL at this time. So he's been able to outlast most everybody else while still being an elite talent at that position. And that in and of itself deserves a massive amount of respect. Moving on to the Bengals, they restructured Joe Burrow's contract, and with it, it cleared up $10 million or so in cap space. Where the Bengals want to open up the room to get more assets in theory, the Chiefs again just got right back to the drawing board after they had already in 2020 set a massive record with granting Mahomes the first contract to be near $500 million in valuation. At the time, it was 10 years, $450 million. $450 million. Now, over the years, they've had to restructure it several times over, and it's paid off. All Patrick Mahomes has done is essentially follow a career path that now only rivals Tom Brady when it comes to quarterbacks. That is one of the only men at this point he is chasing when it comes to the reign of championships and other accolades. No amount of words that I expound on it could even tell you the full story of everything that Patrick Mahomes has done in just his first few seasons as a starter. The numbers speak for themselves. The pacing speaks for itself. And he already, as I'm seeing here right now, holds a pair of all-time career records before he even gets to his full age 31 season. It's insane. And to think that taking Patrick Mahomes at 10th overall was a gamble for the Chiefs that has paid off several times over. So when they initially signed that deal, you couldn't blame them. It had just been a sign of them looking at what had happened for them and looking up at what was a bright future for them, which it still is to this point. You know, despite a couple of years to where the Chiefs might have not been at their best selves, they have still been consistent contenders. They still, in a season where they appear to be weaker than ever before, made the fucking Super Bowl. they did lose brutally to the Eagles, they still fucking made the Super Bowl in the first place. 2025 was an abject down year across the board. And of course, Mahomes got hurt. He is still trying to recover from that and get ready for game day once the regular season kicks off. But even with those last couple years in mind, the Chiefs are still looking at everything that has happened over the past half decade since that deal was signed, and they're saying, yes, we're going to make Mahomes a lifer. It was never in question. So even though they've restructured everything, what they proceeded to do, they added 2 years to Mahomes' contract. So he will be on their books until I think it was 2033. And the total deal will grant him up to 504 rather. You gotta get all the numbers right. $504.75 million in total money on this deal. And that's not even taken into the account everything else that Mahomes has gotten himself into. Minority ownership in the Royals. The loads of sponsorships that he already has had. A different deal that he has with Heinz as well. All this stuff taken into account. And I'm sure that Mahomes is very much on his way to billionaire status. Can you blame the Chiefs for doing it? No. 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 All Mahomes has done since he's been there is shown them that when he's out on the field, they always have a chance. Always. The inevitability of the team might have also diminished. And even when it comes to counting numbers, they may not measure up in the same way that they were, especially after 2022. That is one thing that some people may tend to hold against him. But at the same time, he has still, through all of it, more than done his part to continue being a beacon of light for this team. Even when it looks like their backs are against the wall, he still got something up his sleeve to get them over the hump. He just finds a way. And you can count on that all the fucking time when he's on the field. So, akin to the Surtain II race to open the video, it's a no-brainer that he would get that kind of money. And it's not anything to say that, we're glazing Patrick Mahomes like Chris Collinsworth does. It's the truth of the matter. He is just that damn good, still at this point. And is still in the prime of his career. Man, oh man, dude. Jeez. The Eagles signed AJ Epenesa as well, moving the former Bill over to Philly to add to that deep rotation. The Dolphins also signed Aaron Brewer to a 3-year, $52.5 million contract extension. He is their current center at the point. And honestly, it's not that bad of an idea. I mean, there isn't much that the Dolphins can rely on. But if you can at least get the man literally in the middle, snapping the ball, and controlling the pace of the game, like, you can get him locked up long term. That's pretty important for this Dolphins team right now. So, I don't have much complaints there. And with the amount of money that they cleared up amongst all their players, although they still have to deal with the massive cap hit from that mammoth of a 2-year buyout off of Tagovailoa's deal, you do what you can. You do what you can control. And yeah, the Broncos also signed Sean Payton to a 5-year contract extension. Man, hey, bro, like, it's fair play for Sean Payton at this point. 32-19 record in 3 years ain't necessarily bad, considering where this Broncos team once was before he got there. He's still finding ways to invigorate new life in this team at the age of 62. They went as far as they had ever gotten in this half decade, getting all the way to the AFC Championship game against the Patriots. That's how successful they'd become. So on paper, it appears as though things are looking up for the Broncos. But at the same time, all the things that have gone down throughout this offseason, and the things that Sean Payton has done to, potentially create friction in relationships, it just doesn't paint the best picture. The stuff with Russell Wilson, as much as I'd grill him for that, that's already happened. For you to now, earlier, literally as soon as the game ended, against the Bills, you say that your quarterback's bone bruise at the time was degenerative, and that you knew that, or if you knew that, you wouldn't have drafted him. That already got people thinking, what the fuck is this nigga talking? You gonna say that about your quarterback? Knowing he can't play next week. That could be a bit awkward. On top of a number of other comments that he's come out with throughout this offseason that just don't necessarily stick that well with the people in your locker room. Now again, on the field it could be a completely different tune. But if you're gonna have to deal with that for 5 years, I don't know how many people are going to be able to put up with that over that time span. So Sean Payton, even with him being a bit more traditional, it's you gotta get out of that. There's no way, bro. There's no way that you doing that. I'm not gonna lie. The success on the field matters, but it's also about keeping that locker room afloat. And Sean Payton does not want to find himself in a situation where at this stage of his career, especially after having to take a couple of years off of coaching before getting to Denver in the first place, you do not want to lose the locker room in your situation. He needs to tread lightly. And in some of these cases, just stand down. It's not worth it, bro. Stand down. Moving on to the Panthers. They signed Jalen Coker to a 3-year contract extension worth up to $41 million. And I found this pretty interesting. Jalen Coker is a player who has gotten some well-deserved attention over the past few months, quite frankly. With him having the debut playoff game he had against the Rams, shit. It's hard to, overlook him literally going off for 9 catches and 134 yards against that team to nearly take them down. Niggas don't want to talk about just how close that game was, and Jalen Coker played a huge factor in that. It's ironic. The man out of Holy Cross, in ways, probably was considered the 3rd or 4th wide receiver on the team before last year began. And he done nothing short of just continuing to elevate himself week after week after week. There might not have been many receivers in the NFL who had a stronger close to the year than Jalen Coker. And that's even amongst some of the better wide receivers out there that you consider at the upper echelon. So, Jalen Coker might not have that household name status, but he's more than certainly earned this role. And for him to get all the way up to potentially being regarded as the number 2. I mean, that is just an insane grind that you have to appreciate as a football fan. It is literally something that can inspire a lot of people in this particular role. So Jalen Coker deserves a massive amount of credit there. Of course, with incentives, potentially it can go up. And even with this money in mind, Coker has shown that he's willing to put in the work regardless of the situation he finds himself in. So that's just got to be a very great sign. Great sign for Panthers fans out there. The thing is, again, you have to take into account as well, we're always asking, what does it mean for Xavier Legette, who looks to have a much better season this year? All of it, in ways, it just puts a bit of pressure on him. Even if they don't intend on really doing it to him, it might be a self-inflicted thing. Like, you're seeing all that go down from Legette's perspective, and while that's all good, you want to provide that support for your teammate in that moment, but you know that this is getting in the way of, or not even getting in the way, it's a direct result of what you did not end up doing last year. So Legette is going to be looking to turn that around in real time, but this day is about Jalen Coker. Massive respect to the man. Alright, I am also going to issue a trigger warning for this, because the situation has now gotten to a near 5-year point, and it is still something that heavily bears in all of the hearts and minds of the very people who heard about it, who were there when it happened, the family members of the individual who was affected far greater than anyone else in that moment, and countless other people in the community, to the point where even in the same article, they literally mentioned that the DA at the time in Clark County when the situation happened was so torn about this particular case, and that he'd dealt with other DUI cases. The nature of this one forced him to retire earlier this year. Yes, this incident occurred on November 5th, 2021, a day that will never be forgotten for the Tintor family. But the after effects of the situation in general still reel in to this day as of the recording of this video. And so it is very clear to preface what is about to be said with that information, with that context in mind. The details of it are out there because, again, this was at a time where, not to even remotely make this about myself, I know on my end, I was hearing about the situation when it happened, but I had never talked about this when it first happened in any media whatsoever. I'd never done it. The people who had to spend time talking about this case during that point, it was probably some of the hardest stuff they'd had to ever cover. Multiple lives here being lost and others scarred forever, quite frankly, after something like this. Because the graphic nature of the case, to have the crash happen, and then to have the then 23-year-old Tina Tintor to weaken the details a little bit. Because I don't want to get that graphic here. Essentially, as that impact was made, he or she rather and her dog were still in the car with no way to escape as the flames started to kick in. Just a horrible, unfortunate situation all around. And something that for Henry Ruggs III in particular, he has still in many ways been trying to move on from and trying to outrun. Of course, one of the updates that took place in 2023 was that he was sentenced to 3 to 10 years in prison officially for this particular incident. And of course, with a minimum of 3 years, there was also eligibility for parole. Henry Ruggs III did have his first chance, because there are two, as they mention here. He did have his first chance at going for it on June 11th. And as this ESPN article states, along with other sources, quote, former Las Vegas wide receiver Henry Ruggs III was denied parole Thursday nearly 5 years after a drunken driving crash that killed 23-year-old Tina Tintor and her dog in Las Vegas. Ruggs III, 27, will be eligible for parole again on August 24th, 2027, and could appear before the Nevada Board of Parole Commissioners next May, end quote. Now again, with 2 chances to do it, and with that happening next year, when the 3-year sentence would then be made up at that time, there is still a chance that Ruggs III could then be let go at that time. The main takeaway that a lot of people have been suggesting was that, hey, they followed through on their word. They are sticking to the hard minimum of at least 3 to 10 years. If he would have gotten out at this time, it would only be 2 years and at least 10 months, roughly. Not even remotely close to what was being done, or what was confirmed at the time. There, quite frankly, and I'm going to put this as bluntly as possible, because this is something that had also been understood as well. Like, yes, you want justice to be served in nature, and so having the 3-year limit at least be upheld is fair in nature for them to do, regardless of what Ruggs' attorneys might say about it in their disappointment. Like, they're not holding back on their word. They're staying true to their guns. You have to give them the credit for that. It's fair in a situation where so much uncertainty has already taken place. That is the least that you could ask for out of any party. Whatever may happen with Henry Ruggs III, whether or not he is ever allowed to play football again, it's something that's still going to hold heavy with the community. There have been several things thrown out that, hey, maybe he shouldn't return to the Raiders specifically because it's too much. He just should never be able to play football again after a situation like this. There's no right or wrong answer when it comes to that. All those sentiments, they may be derived from emotion in some cases, but they're fair. Because the reality of the situation is this. And I'm sure that Ruggs III understands this as well. There is literally nothing, and I mean there is nothing at this point of time that Ruggs III could or could not do to even remotely repay or measure up for the things that happened on that night. There is no way for him to do it. And it's just, again, it makes a situation like that just hard to cover. Because you have the loss of life for the Tintor family there, who they have spoken, but in a very low profile. They've only spoken privately with other members of the court to give their own, context to the situation. And they'd have a few quotes in here as well, but nothing on a legitimately high scale. And why would they, they don't want that attention. Because even them being put into the spotlight is always going to rehash the conversation, going back to what happened to their daughter, their sister, a potential partner in some cases on that night. It will happen all the time. And it's just so much to have to ask them to bear. So they may not be pushed to do it. It is as simple as that. All Henry Ruggs III can do at this point, whenever he may get out of this sentence, all he can do is try. All he can do is try. And he already has, in ways. He's spoken up about the dangers of drunk driving. He has children back at home with his fiancée, who was also involved in the crash as a passenger. So there's clearly a life that Ruggs III is trying to lead as well, regardless of how fair or not people may think it is for him to do when he played a part in another one being taken away entirely, and in such, again, a horrific fashion, mind you. That it can truly test your faith at times for some people. But you have got to find a way to forgive. That is what is constantly said. You have to try. It's not going to be an easy process for anybody involved in this. You have to put forth some kind of genuine effort. And Ruggs III can at least say that he has up to this point. But there had been some things that it played a role in this being denied. As this article stated, quote, Parole Board Commissioner Sandy Schmidt said during Ruggs' parole hearing that his activities would be considered mitigating factors in the board's decision, like him going to speak to Las Vegas prisoners and also other inmates in a different correctional center, like those kinds of things as well. They were mentioning him holding a cardio class for people as well. So again, getting involved, trying to help in the best way he can, like those things are fine. Schmidt added that Ruggs was non-compliant with a travel arrangement last October, an aggravating factor in the board's decision. End quote. That is a murky situation as well. I'm not sure what the travel arrangement might have been for. Was it another event for him to speak? Was it for him to appear in another, legal thing before we even got to the parole that he had to oblige to and he just chose not to? What might have been going on with him personally at that time? I have no way of knowing that information right now. I'm not going to guess. But if that is what is being factored in here, then again, they're looking at the whole body of work. And with that sticking out, that's what they're going to lead with. They can't overwrite that completely because of this notion that he may be on path to get back to the league. And ironically enough, like the attorneys, despite their disappointment, they put it best. They put it best that, hey, you cannot take a look at his high-profile status. You have to treat him in this situation as you would any normal person. And I think that, again, when it comes to the courts, they are trying to, as best as they can. I think the alternative would have been for them to let Ruggs III go. Because that would be playing up to his celebrity status. Instead, they're saying, No, like anyone else, as much as they want to be disappointed by it, like anyone else in a situation of this kind, with how bad this was, even without his celebrity status, we are going to make him serve at least the minimum of 3 years, with a max of 10. It might not get to that far to the max of 10, but we are going to stick to our initial conviction here. We're not going to renege on that because he wants to get back into the NFL. I think that is the fairest thing, again, that could be done here. You know, there's a lot. There's a lot. It's a lot. It's heavy, man. I'm telling you. But they, you know, when it comes to this is, I guess, the update that we'll most recently have for quite a while, to be honest. As much as we know right now, you know, Henry Ruggs III is going to continue serving his time. You know, he's already tried to adjust, and, you know, clearly he's taken some strides. He'll have ample opportunity to continue to do so. And, you know, hopefully whenever he may get back out into the real world, he continues to pay it forward. Because, again, the idea is not to chase any realm of perfection at that point. You can't get that time back. By that time, Ruggs III will likely be 28 years old. You cannot get that moment back. For the Tintor family, you cannot get that life that you spent in any way, shape, or form with Tina and her late dog as well. You can't get that back. As tragic as it was, as damning as the evidence was, it happened on November 5th, 2021. It has already happened. It takes a lot of willpower and a lot of mental fortitude. You have to try to find a way to move forward. Just a little bit of hope and just as much grace as possible for everyone involved here. That's the best thing that can happen. It's the best thing that can happen. I have to wait till potentially next year for an update on the parole. There could be a number of other things that flare up as well, but that's all the information on it that we have for right now. Into another situation that's just incredibly dark, because again, I'd already mentioned the Jonathon Cooper situation. I'd already mentioned the Alaric Jackson situation, but now we have to tie it back into a follow-up on the Darron Lee case, which I already explained. I'm saying that this Alaric Jackson thing is gross. The things that came out of the Darron Lee case, when I initially covered it, you could literally equate it to just being flat out evil. Even with it being alleged. The fact that his girlfriend was allegedly murdered by him at that time, and then you proceed to have a slew of messages on ChatGPT with him seemingly trying to find a way to conceal his involvement in this alleged crime. It legitimately does not get any darker than that. And again, I've said it countless times, I don't care about the affiliations of him being an Ohio State man or whatever. None of that shit matters at all, and it shouldn't. I don't care if he was playing in the NFL and a football player at a time. You are not above the law when it comes to doing something like that, allegedly. And if the very nature of this case is true for even a second, I mean, my goodness, there aren't too many ways in which you see a light at the end of the tunnel for Darron Lee here. with everything that I detailed in that initial recap, in those initial articles that I had read at that time, I already understood that you're walking a very thin line. There is not much room to finagle your way out of this. And it would take an absolute heave for any of this to be denied or plausibly rejected. The evidence is just too strong. Too strong. I mean, man. So, when the information that I'm about to go through came out, unfortunately, it wasn't that much of a surprise to me. According to this article from USA Today Sports and other information, quote, former NFL linebacker Darron Lee has been indicted on a first-degree murder charge in the death of his girlfriend. The indictment was returned June 9th by a grand jury in Hamilton County. It came after prosecutors dismissed a tampering with evidence charge, as Hamilton County District Attorney Cody Wamp explained. Prosecutors are pursuing a first-degree murder conviction, which could result in a life sentence if Lee is found guilty. A decision on whether to pursue the death penalty will be made in the coming weeks. End quote. And again, these are the situations where it's like, you just feel for all of the different parties involved. The girlfriend losing her life in this potentially horrible manner. While, again, as I literally said when I covered this, the family of this girlfriend still to this point did not have any clarity on what truly went down with her at the time of the initial reporting. They did not know, and yet they have to hear in February that she was apparently murdered. That is a gut-wrenching feeling for someone whom you literally, if you're the mother, for example, gave life to this person, raised this person up to her adulthood, and you now lose that person before, like, that's just awful, man. It's awful. And then Lee in this situation, with that much to look forward to, and yet still, there could have been a number of different things there. Because being in a situation where you have all this money and all these riches doesn't necessarily mean that you are as well off as you think. And Darron Lee very well could have been dealing with a number of different things under the surface. No one checked for them enough, clearly. And no one begged to ask themselves that question on several occasions. As Darron Lee is just able to go out in his own space, in his own free time, and allegedly get the impulse to do this to another human being. Now, again, it's not something that is legal in every state. But you go from having everything out there in front of you. And now this man, Darron Lee, who again left the NFL in 2023, this man could legitimately be facing the death penalty? This is the severity of the situation we've gotten to? An entire life, multiple lives, potentially gutted and thrown away because of these alleged actions. It's just truly horrific. Like a lot of the other articles here, again, go back through the initial evidence of course, as they highlight on an article from The Guardian, they looked at the ChatGPT evidence. And that was a huge reason why this indictment came. Because, let's just be very honest with ourselves. Now again, I'm removing all of my own thoughts about using it in this case. Because again, it does not fucking matter. But generally, if you're going to use ChatGPT, by all means, you're using it for the most naive things. You are looking up some specific points of information, for sure. You may be trying to learn something and get more insight on something that you previously hadn't known. Fair. You are not using it for the things that Darron Lee allegedly used them for, in the nature of some of these messages as well. Of course, in the initial video that I had, I read them out as they were aligned on the article initially. You go back and read some of those messages, those are the things you're typing up in ChatGPT. And they are so weirdly specific and brutal in nature. And you did not believe, allegedly, if you type these things in, that someone would catch wind of that at some point and try to use that as evidence to incorporate in this case. Again, who am I to question that? But eventually it got here, and they are citing it as key evidence, crucial evidence. So, man, it's just truly a terrible situation, man. Like, I don't know when it comes to this one. And again, you try to be fair as possible. I would say that I have been when it comes to all the cases like this in this particular video. But this one specifically, over the past few months, man, I don't know. I'm not going to lie to you. I don't know. Because everything seems to be lining up to the fact that this may have actually happened. I'm not going to say that. I would hope that other people are not just flat out saying it. But an indictment is only one step further in this entire equation. Because they believe, at this point, that they have enough to actually convict if they go forward to a full trial in this case with Darron Lee. They believe that they have enough to nab him on something. And they're going for a penalty that, again, in most cases, is outlawed in other states. In Tennessee, the death penalty is alive, well, and perfectly legal in their system. And they have plans to use it in this case. This is not a drill. Like, this has gone far beyond just your typical NFL case that you can just throw by the wayside in regards to allegations and things like that. No, this is legitimately serious. And one person, for what we know right now, the fact of the matter is they lost their lives. We allegedly have information in regards to how. And the police, the prosecutors, have their suspect in hand in Darron Lee. This just does not stack up well. I'm not going to lie to you. So again, I'm telling you, I don't know. We gotta see. I don't know. And then I'll actually bypass what I was about to get into next. Because again, just getting into that nature at that point, it doesn't even make sense to transition into something different. So, you may as well stay on some similar sort of plane here. And it's crazy too. Because when it comes to this situation, I had watched a couple weeks ago a video that Flimwell Raps made on this particular player. Of course, the general what happened to's, right? The classics from Flimwell Raps, man. I was watching one of those, and there had been a recent update on this player. Seemingly, he'd been doing very well, or at least in much better condition than he had been over the past few years. Of course, this is a person who had gone through a tremendous amount of personal struggles during this time. It's what took him away from football for quite a while, and what led to some of the suspensions that he faced in the mid-2010s. But he was still pulling, kicking, and fighting back each and every single time. Still, to this point. And even when you look at some of the stuff that I was coming across, this is the same man, despite everything that had gone on in his life. He was literally on the day of the reported incident, alright? He was literally delivering pieces to a homeless shelter. And you had people with the organization take a picture with him in a Knicks jersey. He might have had other plans. And just a few hours after that, you hear that former NFL player Aldon Smith had passed away at the age of 36. Yeah, that Aldon Smith took the league by storm in the early 2010s. As I mentioned, he had gone through a number of suspensions in the mid-2010s and several personal incidents throughout his lifetime, really, as he was dealing with a number of different addictions and afflictions throughout his time. That is very well documented. You can't tell the story of the life of Aldon Smith without those things. He was a trying man, and it seemed, again, recently, like he was actually getting the upper hand here. Not necessarily fully triumphing over everything, but making a path. You know, speaking to other people about some of the stuff that he'd been dealing with as a bit of a motivational speaker. Doing that with the homeless shelter and trying to deliver that to homeless people. Like, he seemingly been getting himself on the right track. And just in an instant. Now, to this point, we still don't know what the cause is. We still don't know. Even all this time later. It's unfortunate, man. But you had stories. According to this quote here from a USA Today article, quote, Amir Sharazi, a friend of Smith, found the former NFL player unresponsive in Smith's car in Los Gatos. He told the San Francisco Chronicle. Shirazi thought Smith may have been sleeping, but then attempted to resuscitate him. Shirazi said he called 911 as well as former 49ers running back Antonio Dixon to assist with CPR. We were joking about life and stuff, and talking about stuff right before Shirazi told the Chronicle. Smith was declared dead an hour later in Good Samaritan Hospital in San Jose, per the report. It's just unfortunate, man. Like, that detail just seems a bit chilling, but still, in terms of like a general autopsy, we have no idea what happened. And again, I don't want to assume, I don't want to get into playing that game at all. I'm not going to lie to you. I can actually check real quick and see, since this is what I'm just capping it off with. Like there's no way I was about to bring in the other thing and, you know, just completely then try to loop it back in talking about it. No, just like, no, come on. That wouldn't make any sense at all. Of course, with the studies done on players over the years and the clinical breakthrough of discovering CTE in a high percentage of these athletes, it is unfortunately a part of this conversation as well. At least something that his family in particular, are trying to explore, just to get some form of clarity on what may have happened. As this quote states, Smith's family will donate his brain to medical experts in Boston to determine if chronic traumatic encephalopathy played a role in his death. As with anyone who dies so suddenly at a young age, we understand that there is a great deal of interest in and speculation about Aldon Smith's passing, and we intend to get to the bottom of it. Attorneys Harry Daniels, Bakari Sellers, and Wayne Kendall said in a statement. To that end, we have taken a number of steps, including sending his brain to Boston, where medical experts will examine it for CTE, as well as other damage caused by years of concussions and additional trauma. In the meantime, we simply ask you to keep Aldon's family in our prayers and respect their privacy as they struggle to come to grips with this terrible loss. So, they're going to give this a shot. The only way, and this has to be repeated for those who may not understand, the only way that you can truly find if there is CTE in the brain, and granted, it's going to be like a specific small protein in like the center of the brain. The only way to find it and locate it and then extract it is for that person to be dead. It is a posthumous examination where, again, not to get graphic, but you quite literally have to remove it, open it up, and then see with a number of different devices, okay, is there CTE? Is the protein for CTE in this brain or not? It's the only way. And again, when you look at the numbers of the posthumous athletes up to this point, specifically in the NFL, a high percentage do turn out to have it. At least those whose brains are sent over for it, that percentage tends to come back pretty high. That doesn't mean that Smith had CTE at the time of his death. We don't know right now. But it is possible, and so they are looking into it at the very least. Yes, so as they say right here, they still don't have a cause. And I suppose that's where we have to stand. It's the only thing we can do right now. It's the only thing that his family at this point can do right now. And to think that likely these people were just talking with this man, chopping it up with him, potentially on the verge of celebrating some major milestones in their own respective lives with him. And they can no longer go about doing those things at this point because they are in the process of grieving over him. His is the perfect example of just not judging a book by its cover, I guess. Again, Aldon Smith dealt with all those things, and yet still, even though he may not have known what was bound to happen, he was still trying to give back, trying to be a role model for other people. And so, even in a moment of tragedy like that, that is something positive to take away from the situation, more than anything else. Hopefully, that family gets all the strength and the grace they need to keep on pushing forward. Peace.